All right, so I wanted to take a second or a few minutes and go over the 2017 prompt that you guys were supposed to annotate last week. I noticed that about half of us, a little over half of us, are not necessarily taking this to the level that we need to be taking this to. So I'm going to go ahead and read through this with you, and we're going to talk about a couple of the points. We won't have time to go through all of them that you find in this text. All right, the passage below is an opening to a speech made in 1960, so I'm going to go ahead and mark this, by American journalist and politician Claire Booth Luce to the journalists at the Women's National Press Club. In this speech, Luce went out to criticize the tendency of the American press to sacrifice journalistic integrity in favor of the perceived public demand for sensationalist stories. Read the passage carefully, then, in a well-developed essay, analyze how Luce uses this introduction to prepare her audience for her message. So we're talking about the how that prepares for the message, which means we have to ask ourselves the question, what's the message? Support your analysis of her rhetoric with specific references to the text. Now, the first thing you should be doing, obviously, is what we just did, is going through the prompt and seeing exactly what is it are they asking you to do. Now, something that I don't feel many of you did after watching those videos was actually reading through this text and marking, just annotating, using left-right reading or any other annotation style that we have used in class on this text in general, because it is still a piece of literature on its own. Even though we know we need to be focusing on the writer, audience, exigence, context, purpose, message, etc., we still need to look at everything that's there to see all of our options, okay? So don't limit yourself when we talk about, hey, we're looking at writer, audience, and purpose. Don't limit yourself to only analyzing those three things. So let's go ahead and read through this. I am happy and flattered to be a guest of honor on this always exciting and challenging occasion. But looking over this audience tonight, I'm less happy than you might think and more challenged than you could know. I stand here at this room invited to throw rocks at you. You have asked me to tell you what's wrong with you, the American press. The subject not only is of great national significance, but also has, one should say, infinite possibilities and infinite perils to the rock thrower. For the banquet speaker who criticizes the weakness or pretensions or exposes the follies and sins of his listeners, even at their invitation, does not generally evoke an enthusiastic nor less a friendly response. The delicate art of giving an audience hell is always one best left to Billy Graham's and the Bishop Sheens, which you can read the note there, who they are. But you are an audience of journalists. There is no audience anywhere who should be more bored, indeed more revolted, by a speaker who tried to fawn on it, butter it up, exaggerate its virtues, play down its faults, and who would more quickly see through any attempt to do so. I ask you only to remember that I am not a volunteer for this subject tonight. You asked for it. For what is good journalism all about? On a working, finite level, it is the effort to achieve illuminating candor in print and to strip away cant. It is the effort to do this not only in matters of state, diplomacy, and politics, but also in every smaller aspect of life that touches the public interest or engages proper public curiosity. It is the effort to explain everything from a summit conference to why the moon looks larger coming over the horizon than it does when it is fully risen in the heavens. It is the effort, too, to describe the lives of men and women, big and small, close at hand or 1,000 miles away, familiar in their behavior, unfamiliar in their idiosyncrasies. It is, to use the big word, the pursuit of and the effort to state the truth. No audience knows better than an audience of journalists that the pursuit of the truth and the articulation of it is the most delicate, hazardous, exacting, and inexact of tasks. Consequently, no audience is more forgiving, I hope, to the speaker who fails or stumbles in his own pursuit of it. The only failure this audience could ever excuse in any speaker would be the failure to try to tell the truth as he sees it about his subject. In my perilous but earnest effort to do so here tonight, I must begin by saying that if there is much that is wrong with the American press, there is also much that is right with it. I know then that you will bear with me, much as it may go against your professional grain, if I ask you to accept some of the good with the bad, even though it may not make such a good copy for your newspapers. For the plain fact is that the U.S. daily press today is not inspiringly good. It is just far and away the best press in the world. All right, so we read through this. Great. Digest the information. What are some things on the first read through that we noticed? And I'm going to go ahead and change the color of my marker because it's going to be hard to see black with black. All right. So I'm happy and flattered. So there's some excitement here. When we did left-right reading, we discussed marking things in the left margins as we noticed them. Okay, so there's excitement. I stand there, you have asked me, she emphasizes this, you have asked me to tell you what's wrong with you. Okay, so you told me to come here. This is your fault that I'm here. I didn't want to do it. You made me come. So she's acknowledging she doesn't want to talk about this. Okay, so there's a little bit of hesitation you could put, if we're going to put this in one word, so hesitation in the fact that this is a sensitive topic. As a journalist especially, she knows this isn't a sensitive topic because she's addressing a bunch of other journalists, right? So for the banquet speaker who criticizes the weakness, pretensions, follies, even their invitation does not generally invoke enthusiasm. She knows what she's about to do is not great. Nobody likes to be criticized, and she acknowledges this. Ooh. All right, no less a friendly. So no less a friendly. If we're talking about a friendly, she's talking about especially, I'm going to abbreviate, especially somebody that does that job, especially someone like them. So what I mean by this is a fellow journalist. Like I wouldn't want to be criticized by somebody that the teaching field. I wouldn't want to hear somebody criticizing the teaching field that is in the teaching field, like another teacher or an administrator or whatever. The delicate art of giving an audience hell is always best left for the Billy Grahams and the Bishop Sheens. Now, if we look at this note, Billy Graham, an American Christian evangelist, however you want to say that, and Fulton John Sheen, an American Catholic archbishop, both became renowned for their religious oratory. These speeches were widely broadcasted to radio, television. These are the people that are going to tell you you're going to hell, which is why she says a delicate art of giving an audience hell is always the one best left to the Billy Grahams and the Bishop Sheens. So she's intending to evoke humor. I'm going to write this. Evokes humor. It evokes humor with a well-known reference, right? You're making this allusion to their speeches, which people during this time, especially in the 1960s, would know who these people were. But you are an audience of journalism. They're journalists. There's no audience anywhere. So she says, there's no audience anywhere who should be more bored, indeed more revolted, by a speaker who tried to fawn on it, butter it up, exaggerate its virtues, play down its faults, and who would more quickly see through any attempt to do so. Oh, I underlined, or I marked the passage a little too much. So what is she saying here? She's saying journalists want the truth. So she makes, and I'm going to move this down. So she makes this deductive reasoning. You are journalists is the first part. Therefore, you want the truth. Now, the thing is, you don't only want the truth, you want the actual truth. You don't want it sugar-coated. You don't want it buttered up. If you butter somebody up, it's like when you come to me and you go, Miss Christina, you look so beautiful today. Can you change my grade? Like, no, she's not saying that. She's saying, you guys don't want this thing. You're journalists. If anybody will call the crap, you guys will call the crap, right? So for what is good journalism all about? So now we see this shift, and I'm going to go ahead and mark this. She starts off by saying, we have this whole section of, I didn't want to be here. You asked me to come here. Be ready for what I'm going to say. Great, fine. Then we go into, so what is good journalism? Well, on a finite level, it's the effort to achieve illuminating candor in print and to strip away cant. So it's the ability to take away all the crap and all the falsehoods and tell the story for what it is. Like, this is what's out here. It is the effort to do this not only in matters of state, diplomacy, politics, but also in every smaller aspect of that touches a public interest. So it's the effort to do this, and I'm going to circle this. It's the effort to achieve illuminating candor. Not only matters of state, diplomacy, politics, smaller aspect of life that touches public interest or engages proper public curiosity. The effort to explain everything from a summit conference to why the moon looks larger. So she's saying journalism is the effort to explain anything that catches public interest, including politics, including world issues, but also the small things. It is the effort to describe the lives of men and women, blah, blah, blah. No audience knows better than an audience of journalists. So no audience of journalists no audience knows better than an audience of journalism that the pursuit of truth and the articulation of it is the most delicate, hazardous, exciting, and inexact of tasks. Inexact, notice there is some varied text here. We have this italicized text which shows emphasis, and I'm going to make a brief little note here that says emphasize, because that is important, because we don't see the whole text being italicized. We see this one word where she's saying inexact. She's stressing this, which means it's not perfect. If something is not exact, it's not perfect. There is flaw in it. Consequently, no audience is more forgiving, I hope. So again, this I hope is humor, right? Because it's like, well, at least I hope so. For my sake, I'm standing up here about to criticize you. The speaker who fails or stumbles in his own pursuit of it. The only failure this audience could never excuse in any speaker would be the failure to try to tell the truth as he sees it about the subject. Now, I want to put in my notes here that this is a qualifier. And we talked about qualifiers in the beginning of the year, in that you are making an argument, you're saying this thing exists, but there's an exception to this. So she's asserting that there's no audience that knows better than an audience of journalists, that the pursuit of truth and the articulation of it is the most delicate, hazardous, and exacting and inexact of tasks. You guys know how hard this is. She's openly saying this. You know how hard this is. So, I hope, or she's saying, she's kind of trying to assert that because of this, you will be more forgiving, right? And that the only thing you wouldn't be forgiving of is the failure to actually tell the truth.